Your mind lies to you every single day. It tells you 5 more minutes when the alarm goes off. It whispers, tomorrow, when you know you should start today. It screams you can't, right when you're about to do something that matters. The greatest defeat is that you believe the lie. You do not just listen, you submit. You have allowed your mind's resistance to become the master of your decisions. There are people walking around whose minds just do what they tell them. They decide to work, they work. They decide to stop scrolling, they stop. They decide to start that project, it gets started. No internal war, no 3-hour negotiation with themselves, no motivation required. Their mind just obeys. And you know what most people think when they see this? They're just built different. They have better genetics. Their brain works better than mine. But what if the difference isn't genetic? What if their mind obeys because they trained it to obey? Miyamoto Musashi won over 60 sword duels without losing once. But his real achievement wasn't defeating opponents. It was defeating his own mind. He could command his mind to feel no fear in a death match, and fear would vanish. He could command his mind to focus for hours in meditation, and distraction would disappear. He could command his mind to execute a technique perfectly under pressure, and hesitation would dissolve. Before he died, he wrote down the exact training system that made his mind completely obedient. And when you understand how it works, you'll realize your mind's disobedience isn't permanent. It's just trained. Before we start, subscribe and drop a comment telling me the one thing your mind keeps stopping you from doing. This helps more people find this, and I read every single one. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. Marcus was a 31-year-old software developer working at a startup in Austin. Talented, technically skilled, respected by his team. But he had a problem that was slowly destroying his career. For 9 months, he'd been trying to build his side project, an app he knew could work, an idea his mentor had said was solid, the project that could let him quit his job and build something of his own. Every single morning, he'd wake up and tell himself, "Today I'm making real progress on this." Every single evening, he'd go to bed having done nothing. The pattern was always the same. He'd get home from work, grab dinner, sit down at his computer with energy and intention, open his code editor, and his mind would immediately begin. "You're too tired from work today. You should rest and code tomorrow when you're fresh." Tomorrow never came. This approach isn't right. You should research the tech stack more before building. 3 hours of research, 0 lines of code written. Maybe you should redesign the database schema first. Get the foundation perfect. 6 hours of planning. The actual building remained untouched. Marcus tried everything to overcome this. He'd blocked social media sites, set up accountability partners, joined online communities, tried habit trackers, scheduled coding sessions. Nothing worked. Because the problem wasn't his environment or his system. The problem was that when his mind said no, Marcus couldn't make it obey yes. The internal war reached its peak one evening, when he could no longer ignore the rebellion of his own mind. Marcus cleared his entire weekend. No plans, no obligations, no excuses. He'd even told his girlfriend he needed the space to finally make progress. This was it. 16 hours across Saturday and Sunday, dedicated to his project. He was finally going to build this thing. He sat down at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. By 9:15, his mind had convinced him to reorganize his development environment first. You need the right setup for productive coding. By 11:30, he was watching YouTube tutorials on a framework he already knew. By 2 p.m., he was on Reddit reading about other developers' side projects. This is research. This counts as working on it. By 7 p.m., he closed his laptop having written exactly 0 new lines of code and built exactly 0 new features. He sat there at his desk, staring at his closed laptop, and for the first time in his life, he said it out loud. "My mind is running my life, and it's running it straight into the ground." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the pattern. He'd make a decision with his conscious mind. "I'm building this feature today." And his subconscious mind would simply override it. "No, we're not." And he'd obey the override. Every single time. At 3 a.m., he was scrolling through forums about productivity and discipline and found a discussion about samurai mental training. Someone had posted a quote from Miyamoto Musashi's Dokudo. Do not let your body be moved by your mind. Let your mind be moved by your body. Marcus read it 3 times. Then he understood. He'd been trying to convince his mind to cooperate, trying to motivate it, inspire it, trick it into working. Musashi wasn't talking about convincing your mind. He was talking about commanding it. There's a difference. Chapter 2, The First Principle, Metsuke, the Fixed Gaze. Marcus spent the next 4 hours reading everything he could find about Musashi's training methods. And he discovered that his mental mastery didn't come naturally. In Musashi's first few duels as a teenager, he almost died. Not because his opponents were more skilled, but because his own mind betrayed him mid-fight. His eyes would dart around looking for threats. His attention would split between his opponent and his fear. His mind would flood with possibilities. What if he strikes from that angle? What if I'm too slow? What if my technique fails? What if... And in the split second his attention divided, his opponent would strike. Musashi realized the problem wasn't his sword technique. The problem was that his mind wouldn't stay where he put it. So he developed what he called Metsuke, the fixed gaze. But it wasn't about his eyes. It was about training his attention to stay exactly where he commanded it to stay. The training was simple but brutal. He would sit in meditation and stare at a single point on the wall. Just one point. His mind would try to drift. He wouldn't fight the drift. He'd just notice it and bring his attention back to the point. Point, drift, return. Point, drift, return. Hours of this, days, weeks. His mind learned. When he points his attention somewhere, it stays there. Not because it wants to, because that's what happens now. A neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins, who has been studying attention control for 15 years, found that most people's attention fractures every 40 seconds on average. The mind generates a distraction impulse, and the person follows it. But subjects who practiced what they called directed attention training showed what they termed attentional anchoring, the ability to hold focus on command for extended periods without the mind generating competing impulses. Marcus tested this immediately the next morning. He sat down at his desk, set a timer for just 5 minutes, opened his code editor, and gave his mind a command. We're implementing this authentication function, just this, for 5 minutes. 30 seconds in, his mind said, check Slack. Marcus didn't argue with it, didn't negotiate, just brought his attention back to the code. 1 minute in, you should look up that Stack Overflow answer first. Return attention to code. 2 minutes in, this function structure is wrong. You should refactor the whole approach. Return attention to code. His mind rebelled 19 times in the first minute. But Marcus didn't fight the rebellions. He just kept returning his attention to the work. By minute 5, the rebellions had decreased to 2. When the timer went off, Marcus looked at his screen. He'd written 12 lines of working code. More real progress than he'd made in the previous 3 hours of trying. The difference was profound. Before, he'd been negotiating with every impulse. Maybe I should check that documentation. Maybe this approach does need more research. Maybe I should plan this out more first. Every negotiation gave his mind leverage to pull him away. Now he wasn't negotiating. His mind generated impulses. He observed them. Then he returned his attention to where he'd commanded it to be. Point, return, point, return. He practiced this every evening for a week. 5-minute sessions. Just 5 minutes of keeping his attention exactly where he commanded it. By day 3, the rebellions in those 5 minutes dropped to 1 or 2. By day 7, he could hold his attention steady for the full 5 minutes with his mind barely generating any resistance at all. His mind was learning. When he points attention at code, it stays on code. Generating distractions doesn't pull him away anymore. Marcus increased to 10-minute sessions, then 20, then 40. Each time the same pattern. His mind would test him with distractions. He'd return his attention. His mind would learn. The resistance would decrease. Chapter 3. The Second Principle. Zanshin, the Remaining Mind. 2 weeks into his training, Marcus discovered a new problem. He could focus beautifully now during coding sessions. But the moment he completed a function or solved a bug, his mind would scatter completely. He'd finish implementing one feature, and then spend 30 minutes deciding what to work on next, or checking Twitter, or browsing hacker news under the excuse of seeing what others are building. The focus during work was strong, but between tasks, his mind would escape. He found Musashi's answer in his writings about Zanshin, the remaining mind. Musashi noticed that most warriors would drop their guard the instant they thought a fight was over. They'd strike their opponent, see them fall, and their mind would relax. That single moment of mental relaxation got them killed because the opponent wasn't actually finished. So Musashi trained what he called the mind that remains, maintaining command even in the spaces between actions. He would finish a sword drill and immediately move into the starting position for the next drill. No rest period, no moment where his mind could wander off and debate what to do next. Finish one action, begin the next, maintain command through the transition. His mind learned there is no gap where you get to take control back. Command continues. Marcus applied this immediately. Finish one task, immediately begin the next. No buffer time for his mind to suggest distractions. He'd complete an authentication function. His mind would whisper, "Take a break, you earned it." He'd already started writing the next API endpoint. No gap. He'd finish debugging. His mind would suggest, "Check Reddit for 5 minutes." He'd already opened the next feature file. The first day of this was exhausting. His mind kept trying to insert rest periods, negotiation periods, just check email quick periods. Marcus kept eliminating the gaps. By day 3, something shifted. His mind stopped fighting for the gaps because it learned the gaps weren't coming. It adapted. It stayed in build mode because build mode was continuous. A researcher from Cambridge studying task switching has found that the average person loses 23 minutes of productive focus every time they switch tasks or take an unplanned break. The mind has to rebuild momentum each time, but subjects who practiced what they called continuous engagement protocols, eliminating gaps between tasks, maintained what they termed momentum cognition. The mind stays in execution mode because it never exits execution mode. By week 3, Marcus was coding in 2-hour blocks with zero internal negotiation. Not because he'd become superhuman, because his mind had learned that suggesting breaks doesn't work. He doesn't take them, so the mind stopped suggesting them. Chapter 4. The third principle. Fudoshin, the immovable mind. 1 month into his training, Marcus's focus had completely transformed. He could command his attention. He could maintain momentum between tasks. But he discovered a third problem that was bigger than both. On certain days, usually when he was stuck on a difficult bug or facing a complex architectural decision, his mind wouldn't just suggest distractions. It would stage emotional rebellions. This project is pointless. You're not good enough to build something people will actually use. There are thousands of apps like this already. You're wasting your time. These weren't small distractions he could redirect. These were emotional storms that paralyzed him completely. He found Musashi's answer in his writings about Fudoshin, the immovable mind. Musashi faced opponents who would scream, taunt, or use psychological warfare before duels. They'd insult his heritage, mock his skill, or try to generate fear about the fight. Early in his career, these tactics worked. His mind would generate fear or anger, and the emotion would control his body's response. So Musashi trained what he called immovability, not by suppressing the emotions, but by staying separate from them. He'd describe it like this: the wind blows, the tree bends, but the root does not move. Let your emotions be the branches. You remain the root. When fear came during a duel, he'd observe it. There is fear present, not I am afraid. That distinction was everything. The emotion was weather passing through his mind. He was the ground beneath the weather. The weather doesn't control the ground. A psychologist from Stanford who has been studying metacognition for 14 years found that subjects who practiced cognitive diffusion, observing thoughts as mental events rather than truths, showed 67% reduction in behavioral disruption from negative thinking patterns. The thoughts still occur, but they lose their power to control behavior when you stop identifying with them. Marcus started practicing this immediately. When the wave of "this project is pointless" hit his mind, instead of fighting it or believing it, he'd simply observe, there's a doubt thought happening. Not, I'm doubting myself, just, there's doubt present. The thought was an event in his mind. Not him, not truth, just weather. The first time he tried this, the thought screamed louder. No, this really is pointless. This isn't just a thought. It's reality. Marcus kept coding. The thought was loud. He was separate. Within 10 minutes, the emotional storm passed. Because storms always pass when you don't feed them with belief or resistance. He practiced this for 2 weeks. Every time an emotional rebellion occurred, doubt, imposter syndrome, overwhelm, perfectionism, he'd practice the same response. By week 6, the emotional rebellions lost their power completely. They still showed up occasionally, but they couldn't stop him anymore because he'd stopped identifying with them. His mind could generate whatever emotions it wanted, but it couldn't make him obey them unless he identified with them as truth. Chapter 5. The Complete Transformation. 3 months after finding Musashi's training method, Marcus launched his app. Not a perfect version, not when it was completely ready. He just launched it. Within 2 weeks, he had his first 100 users. Within a month, he had paying customers. Within 2 months, he'd made enough revenue to justify going full-time on it. His app wasn't revolutionary. His code wasn't perfect. He wasn't a better developer than he'd been 3 months earlier. He'd just stopped letting his mind run his life. Marcus's coworker, who'd watched his transformation, asked how he'd suddenly become so productive on his side project. Marcus's answer was simple. I stopped treating my mind like it's in charge. It generates suggestions. I decide which ones to follow. Now, as you are watching this, think about your entire life up until now. Every time your mind said, I don't feel like it, and you stopped, you trained your mind that resistance works. Every time your mind said, this is uncomfortable, and you quit, you trained your mind that discomfort controls you. Every time your mind said, do this instead, and you obeyed, you trained your mind that it's the master. You've been training your mind for years. You just trained it in the wrong direction. Musashi spent 50 years with a completely obedient mind. Not because he was born special, because he trained it that way from age 13. You might be starting at 25, 35, or 45. The age doesn't matter. The mind learns when the training is consistent. Miyamoto Musashi died at 62, undefeated in over 60 duels. His final written words in the Dokudo were, do not regret what you have done. He had 0 regrets, because his mind never stopped him from doing what mattered. That's available to you right now. Not the sword duels, not the warrior life, but the trained mind that goes where you point it, stays where you place it, and doesn't control you with its weather. Subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments, what's the first thing you're going to train your mind to stop stopping you from doing? Be specific. Public commitment is the first step toward actually doing it. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's just untrained. The training starts right now.